Tonight, the man who has reshaped the world order, for better or worse, entered the history books, touching down at Stansted to become the first ever president to have the red carpet rolled out twice for a state visit.
President Donald Trump arrived in Britain this week with the kind of ceremony that few leaders ever received. He became the first American president to be granted a second state visit, complete with the red carpet, a helicopter ride into London, and the promise of a royal welcome at Windsor Castle. It should have been a triumph, a reminder of prestige and tradition.
It's a great honor, and this one's at Windsor. They've never used Windsor Castle for this before, but basically I'm there also on trade.
Yet within minutes of his arrival, the story turned in a very different direction.
As Donald Trump arrives in London, so begins a charm offensive on an epic scale.
Protesters managed to project images of Trump with Jeffrey Epstein onto the ancient walls of Windsor Castle. What was supposed to be a symbol of respect and dignity became a global embarrassment. The trip was designed to showcase power and legitimacy. Instead, the opening act left an unforgettable stain.
The president came to London seeking to shift the narrative away from domestic controversies and to bask in the splendor of Britain's monarchy. He spoke often of his friendship with King Charles and clearly believed that Windsor Castle, used for the first time as the centerpiece of a state visit, would elevate his image. The plan was simple: drown out criticism with pageantry. But optics are fragile. What people remember is not the lavish banquet or the guard of honor. They remember the projected images that spread instantly across social media. Instead of being portrayed as a statesman, Trump was mocked worldwide. It is striking that a leader who has built his political brand on control and dominance could see the narrative collapse so quickly. He can order tariffs that reshape world trade, but he could not stop a small projector from defining the moment.
Beyond the ceremony, the trip carried serious business. The United Kingdom is looking to adjust its trade arrangement with the United States. Trump hinted that London might get a slightly better deal, but there were no clear commitments. Britain has been struggling with the ripple effects of Washington's reciprocal tariff policy, which applies rates of 10 to 50% on a wide range of imports. For UK exporters in sectors like steel and aluminum, the pressure is real. That is why British officials wanted this visit to produce something more concrete. Yet the most significant economic news of the week did not come from the White House at all. It came from Microsoft. The company announced a $30 billion investment in the United Kingdom, the single largest financial commitment it has ever made there. The funds will expand data centers and support an advanced artificial intelligence supercomputer. For the UK, this is not just symbolism. It is a tangible boost to infrastructure, innovation, and jobs. And for observers, it underscored an awkward truth. While Trump tried to dominate headlines with royal splendor, the lasting legacy of the visit may belong to a technology giant.
By the time Air Force One departs, what will remain in the public memory is not the banquets or the photo opportunities. It will be the clash between the carefully staged theater of diplomacy and the raw disruption of a protester's projector. Britain may still push for trade relief, and the Microsoft deal will move forward regardless of political optics. But Trump's effort to reset his image abroad has been overshadowed. The visit was meant to be a charm offensive, proof of status and friendship. Instead, it showed how easily prestige can unravel. In the end, Windsor 2025 will not be remembered for the elegance of the monarchy. It will be remembered for how quickly ceremony gave way to humiliation, and how a simple beam of light managed to outshine the world's most powerful man.
Canada and the United States have reestablished free trade for the vast majority of our goods.
A gesture in the hopes it will reset the relationship with the U.S.
After months of tariffs and tense exchanges, the tone between Washington and Ottawa has shifted. Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced that Canada will remove many of its counter tariffs on American goods. He presented this not as a concession, but as a reset. Carney said Canada is aligning with the United States to preserve what he calls the best trade deal any country currently has with America. President Trump welcomed the move and said new negotiations would begin soon. For both leaders, this moment marks the reopening of talks that will shape the next phase of North American trade.
Starting September 1st, Canada will scrap the 25% counter tariffs it placed on American goods covered by the North American Free Trade Deal.
Donald Trump has relied on tariffs as his main negotiating tool. Since August 1st, Canadian goods outside of CUSMA have faced a 35% duty. On top of that, U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum remain at 50%, raising costs for North American manufacturers. For integrated supply chains, this has disrupted the just-in-time model that once defined cross-border trade. This strategy mirrors what Trump has done with Europe, which accepted a 15% baseline tariff in exchange for stability. The same logic applied to Japan and South Korea with sectoral agreements. Canada, however, already holds a unique position. Roughly 85 to 90% of Canadian exports to the U.S. remain tariff-free under CUSMA, leaving the effective tariff rate at about 5.5%. By comparison, the global average tariff into the U.S. has jumped to nearly 16%, according to government data released earlier this month. Trump points to these figures as evidence that his pressure tactics are working.
We're matching what the United States has done, what the president has done. We have the best deal of any country with the United States right now.
Our hope is that we can come to a bilateral arrangement which takes some pressure off the sectoral tariffs.
Mark Carney has pushed back against claims that lifting counter tariffs is surrender. He argues Canada is protecting strategic sectors while ensuring Canadian goods keep their unique advantage in the U.S. market. By removing retaliatory duties, he signals that Canada respects the current agreement and is positioning itself for the next phase of talks. His priority is stability. Canadian businesses want long-term certainty before making new investments, and that stability depends on clear rules. With the U.S. Carney's approach is to demonstrate that Canada can maintain its access to the American market while also exploring diversification abroad. His upcoming trip to Germany with key ministers highlights this push. Rather than backing down, Carney is choosing to secure leverage and keep Canada's position intact as negotiations intensify.
Our negotiations with the United States have been taking place as the U.S. has been in the process of fundamentally transforming all of its trading relationships.
The toughest work still lies ahead. Renegotiation of CUSMA could take up to 18 months, and both governments know the stakes are enormous. Daily trade between the two countries is worth an estimated $2.5 to $3 billion US dollars, a figure that underscores why neither side can afford prolonged disruption. Trump wants to prove that his tariff strategy can reset terms in America's favor. Carney wants to show that Canada can protect its privileged access without conceding vital industries. The unresolved disputes over metals and autos remain serious obstacles. Integrated supply chains, especially in autos, continue to face pressure. Yet Canada enters this stage with a strong advantage. It still enjoys the lowest average tariff rate of any U.S. trading partner. For Americans, the partnership secures energy, auto parts, and agricultural inputs that cannot easily be replaced. For Canadians, the United States is still the dominant market. The coming months will test endurance more than rhetoric. Trump's pressure and Carney's patience are now on a collision course. The question is not whether one side will fold, but whether both can find a balance that secures North America's economic future.
We're more united and more determined to stand up for Canada than at any time in my entire lifetime. We made it clear to President Trump and to the world that Canada is not for sale and Canada will never, ever be a 51st state.
President Trump has been celebrating his tariff campaign as a victory, pointing to the billions collected for Washington. In reality, those tariffs are backfiring at home, driving up prices for American families and adding pressure on U.S. businesses. While the president frames tariffs as proof of American strength, Canada is holding firm. On August 18th, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Premier Doug Ford met in Ottawa to coordinate their response, focusing on how to strengthen competitiveness at home. The contrast could not be sharper. Short-term revenue in Washington, long-term resilience in Canada.
And important discussion with Premier Ford this morning on a variety of aspects for the Ontario economy, the Canadian economy, which of course includes trade but goes much more to the issues that we can control and how we build out from within.
We have to hold firm and we have to create the environment. For instance, the steel sector. The steel sector, we have to look at the large infrastructure projects, shipbuilding, and make sure that large-scale infrastructure projects like a pipeline, the steel pipes come from Ontario.
On August 18th, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Ontario Premier Doug Ford stood side by side in Ottawa. Their focus was not on what Washington might do next, but on building Canada's own strength. Carney stressed the need to focus on housing, on the steel and auto sectors, and on new fields such as artificial intelligence. His point was simple. Canada must build competitiveness from within, not depend on external decisions. Ford delivered the same message in his own way.
We're united on the message of let's start worrying about how we can be competitive here. Donald Trump is so unpredictable. I don't even know if he knows what he's doing tomorrow morning.
He reminded Canadians that Trump is unpredictable, that no one can forecast what the president will announce tomorrow. The answer, he said, is to make Canada the most competitive place to invest by reducing taxes, cutting red tape, and keeping production at home. He cited last year's record numbers. In 2024, Ontario attracted 39.9 billion Canadian dollars in foreign direct investment, creating 25,000 jobs. To him, the challenge is to repeat and expand those results even under the pressure of tariffs. Both leaders framed their approach as a united one. They called it Team Canada, not just a slogan, but a strategy that brings together provinces, Indigenous communities, and businesses. And the message was not only for Canadians. Ford reminded audiences in the United States that tariffs on Canadian goods are effectively taxes on American families because the two economies are so deeply linked. Canada is not standing still. Over the past months, governments at both federal and provincial levels have rolled out packages worth tens of billions of dollars to shield industries and workers. Ontario alone has launched a $1.5 billion financing program for companies hurt by U.S. tariffs and is investing $2.5 billion in skills training so workers can transition into new opportunities. A further $500 million fund has been created to process critical minerals, ensuring that resources mined in Ontario are refined domestically. The effort goes beyond defensive spending. Ontario has signed new internal trade agreements with every other province and territory, removing barriers under the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. Officials estimate that could add more than $200 billion to economic output in the coming years. The federal government, meanwhile, continues to prioritize major investments in healthcare, infrastructure, and housing to reinforce social and economic stability. Together, these measures show that Canada is using the tariff crisis as a catalyst for long-term transformation.
We'll stop worrying about Donald Trump. We'll start focusing on Ontario, on Canada, and all the other provinces and territories.
Trump presents tariffs as proof of success, but they are raising costs in his own country. Canada is responding by holding firm and focusing on long-term competitiveness. This is not only a trade fight, it is a test of endurance, and Canada is showing it is ready. Carney and Ford may differ in style, but both underline the same message. Canada is not retreating, not waiting, and not bending. It is adapting, rebuilding, and preparing for the next decade. Trump's tariffs may have set the stage, but Canada has chosen to write its own script. And in this unfolding clash, endurance and vision will matter far more than revenue headlines from Washington.